This simply shouldn't be happening right now. We've sent our best spacecraft to study our home star. We were absolutely certain that we fully understood how the sun works. But what the instruments are recording today is frightening even the most experienced astrophysicists. Our star is behaving completely differently from what the world's best models predicted. For decades, scientists have studied the rhythms of solar activity and derived rigorous mathematical patterns. We have created detailed graphs of 11-year cycles and learned to make long-term forecasts. According to all official NASA calculations, we should now be observing a period of relative calm. The current 25th cycle was originally predicted to be one of the weakest in history. Our technological civilization let its guard down, trusting these authoritative and reassuring scientific data. But reality turned out to be far more unpredictable and dangerous for our cozy world. Instead of a sleepy sun, we suddenly found ourselves facing a gigantic and unstable plasma cauldron. The number of sunspots and powerful flares has exceeded all conceivable limits many times over. Our mathematical models are literally bursting at the seams under the onslaught of new, shocking data. With each passing day, the situation becomes increasingly tense and spirals out of control. We were wrong in our calculations, and this mistake may cost us dearly. For centuries, people observed the sun and considered it an eternal and unchanging source of life. Ancient thinkers believed in the absolute tranquility of the heavenly bodies. But with the advent of the first telescopes, this beautiful illusion began to gradually dissipate. Astronomers of the last century painstakingly sketched the dark spots on the bright disk of our star. They spent sleepless nights at their instruments for the sake of this valuable data. Scientists hoped to find at least some logic in the appearance of these mysterious marks. Researchers were the first to notice a surprising pattern in the behavior of this giant ball of plasma. Roughly every 11 years, the number of these strange spots would increase and then decrease. This recurring rhythm was called the solar cycle. This discovery gave humanity a false sense of complete control over space weather. We arrogantly decided that we had finally unraveled the main mystery of our sun. Scientists believed in their ability to predict the mood of this massive star. Based on these long-term observations, scientists built highly complex forecasting systems. Mathematicians wrote lengthy formulas to describe upcoming solar storms. Engineers launched a whole fleet of expensive satellites for continuous monitoring of activity. The spacecraft took their orbits and aimed their lenses directly at the sun. These smart machines transmit terabytes of information about the star's condition to Earth around the clock. The data flows like an endless river to research centers around the world. The planet's best supercomputers continuously analyze streams of charged particles and magnetic fields. Intelligent machines generate beautiful graphs and three-dimensional models of the solar corona. Every slightest fluctuation in energy is recorded and carefully archived. The scientific community has come to sincerely believe in the reliability of its virtual simulations. Physicists have concluded that the sun will never again be able to present us with unpleasant surprises. We have convinced ourselves that we have completely tamed the cosmic elements through the power of intellect. When the previous 24th activity cycle ended, researchers breathed a huge sigh of relief. This period turned out to be surprisingly calm by all historical standards. The sun behaved quietly and did not cause any serious problems for our ground-based infrastructure. Equipment functioned properly, and background radiation remained within normal limits. Based on this recent data, leading global agencies prepared their reports. Experts issued extremely optimistic forecasts for the coming decade. They officially declared from high platforms the beginning of a new era of solar calm. Scientists promised that the next period of activity would be even weaker and safer for us. The public gladly accepted this reassuring news from the world of science. Governments of various countries and major technology corporations unquestioningly believed these calculations. Businesses continued to actively build new, vulnerable communication and power transmission networks. No one even considered additional protection for equipment against space threats. We sincerely believed in the gradual subsiding of the turbulent processes within the star. It seemed that the Sun was slowly entering a phase of a prolonged historical minimum. Physicists even began to seriously discuss the possible recurrence of the great cold spells of past centuries. Articles about an impending little ice age began appearing in scientific journals. This reassuring picture of the world fit perfectly into our complex physical models. The graphs trended steadily downward, confirming the boldest hypotheses of theorists. None of the experts expected any threat from the star anymore. It was supposed to sleep peacefully and warm the planet without sudden surges of radiation. Relying on this confidence, humanity boldly increased its technological power. Day by day, we increased our total dependence on fragile electronic technologies. Cities were covered with communication towers, and orbit was filled with thousands of new satellites. But we forgot one very important and fundamental detail about the wild nature of space. We have grown accustomed to viewing the stars as something ordinary and completely safe. But no star has ever been merely a stable light bulb in the night sky. In reality, it is a living and incredibly powerful thermonuclear reactor without walls. In its deep, dark depths, primal forces rage every second. There, the most complex physical processes of colossal destructive power occur continuously. Plasma boils and churns under the influence of monstrous temperatures and immense pressure. The Sun's immense magnetic fields are in constant, aggressive motion. They twist into tight coils, suddenly snap, and rearrange themselves in utterly unimaginable chaos. Any attempt to accurately predict this wild behavior is doomed to failure from the start. It is like trying to calculate the trajectory of every single drop of water in a boiling kettle. Our best mathematical formulas turned out to be too primitive tools. They are simply unsuitable for accurately describing such unbridled and monstrous energy. Reality began to diverge from theory rather quickly. The first tentative warning signs began to appear right at the start of the 25th cycle. New sunspots began appearing on the disk much faster than usual. Their number rapidly exceeded all values allowed by official charts. At first, scientists tried to reassure themselves and not sound the alarm prematurely. They tried to attribute these anomalies to ordinary statistical error and simple chance. Researchers gave presentations and asked people not to panic. They confidently assured the public of the infallibility of their initial calculations. Experts declared that activity would surely return to the predicted norm very soon. But the star seemed to be laughing at people's pathetic attempts to box it in. Yet the graphs of daily observations stubbornly and inexorably crept upward. The curved lines on the monitors mercilessly shattered all existing scientific models. A little more time passed, and it became simply impossible to hide the truth. Soon, the most unpleasant turn of events became absolutely clear to the scientific community. The experts' initial, so promising forecast had failed with a resounding crash. Instead of the expected calm, we suddenly experienced a sharp and very frightening surge in activity. The level of cosmic aggression grew with each passing day, without a single pause. The Sun had clearly decided to demonstrate its true destructive power. Without warning, the Sun began firing dense and powerful streams of radiation. Eruptions of superheated plasma occurred with incredible and terrifying regularity. It was as if the star had suddenly awakened from a long and deep historical slumber. It began to furiously and rapidly make up for the time lost over the past years. Our cozy and completely safe model of reality collapsed like a house of cards. All illusions were finally shattered to pieces in just a few short months. In public, scientists tried to maintain a stony calm in front of journalists. But this discovery caused a real, quiet panic among specialists in space weather. In closed chat rooms and at secret briefings, there was a complete lack of understanding of the situation. They realized with horror their professional helplessness in the face of the facts. Researchers understood that they had absolutely no grasp of the true causes of such a drastic change. The basic laws of astrophysics seemed to have stopped working as usual. If years of fundamental calculations turned out to be so grossly erroneous, it was a death sentence for the system. It meant we were completely overlooking something critically important for survival. It became clear that powerful hidden mechanisms were at work deep within the sun. These secret workings of the star are not described at all in our current university textbooks. We suddenly found ourselves completely blind and defenseless in the face of a gigantic cosmic threat. All of Earth's civilization has encountered a terrifying unknown right on its doorstep. Recognizing the problem does not provide us with any instant solutions. The most terrifying thing is that we are physically unable to quickly correct our mistakes. Our modern civilization is already firmly built around one very dangerous idea. We have built society on the foundation of the idea of a completely safe and always predictable space. Humans have tightly wrapped the planet Earth in a dense network of fragile wires and sensitive microchips. Outer space has been filled with thousands of vital orbital communication relays. All of this highly complex global architecture was designed under conditions of illusory calm. All of these electronic systems were created without taking truly extreme solar flares into account. Engineers cut corners on shielding, trusting the astrophysicists' erroneous predictions. As a result, we have quite willingly driven ourselves into a high-tech trap. There is simply no quick or easy way out of this digital captivity. And now this gigantic trap is ready to snap shut at the slightest gust of cosmic wind. History has repeatedly proven this bitter and harsh truth to us. The illusion of total control always comes at too high a cost to humanity in times of acute crisis. For decades, we stared intently at beautiful computer graphics. People sincerely believed they were keeping the wild sun firmly on a short, reliable leash. Now, all that naive and foolish self-confidence has finally vanished without a trace. It has been replaced by a truly chilling existential dread in closed scientific laboratories. Scientists have canceled their vacations and switched to an emergency round-the-clock work schedule. Astrophysicists do not leave their glowing monitors, anxiously awaiting new plasma eruptions. Our home star has suddenly and radically changed the old rules of the game. It has made its move, barely bothering to warn us in advance. All humanity can do is watch events unfold and hope for a miracle. And everyone understands that this is only the beginning of a truly massive cosmic storm. Spring brought with it events that forever changed science's attitude toward the sun. In May 2024, harsh reality finally shattered all the reassuring scientific predictions. A group of sunspots of absolutely colossal proportions suddenly formed on the sun's surface. This anomalous zone exceeded the size of our home planet by several dozen times. Astronomers watched with alarm as this dark monster rapidly gained strength. This vast region of extreme magnetic instability was terrifying in its size. It was so gigantic that it could easily be seen from Earth with the naked eye. We didn't have to wait long for disaster, as the energy tension had risen to critical levels. Soon, this region produced a continuous series of powerful coronal mass ejections. Billions of tons of scorching and deadly plasma tore away from the star. They hurtled straight toward our small and fragile Earth. The catastrophe began to unfold right before the eyes of the stunned researchers. Events unfolded with such incredible and staggering speed that satellite operators could barely react. There was simply no time left for lengthy deliberations or coordinating actions. Special orbital spacecraft from early warning systems were the first to take the brunt of the impact. They recorded an absolutely unprecedented level of hard radiation in the approaching stream. The sensors went off the charts, transmitting distress signals to Earth. The physical parameters of the approaching storm shattered all familiar stereotypes. The speed of this deadly solar wind instantly exceeded all known normal values. And the most terrifying thing was that it continued to grow rapidly and inexorably. Scientists at ground-based space weather centers stared at the red warning graphs with undisguised horror. Warning sirens wailed through the quiet corridors of research institutes. It became crystal clear to everyone that this impact would be far more powerful than anything seen in this century. The collision of two gigantic cosmic forces occurred with the deafening silence of a vacuum. When the dense plasma cloud finally reached Earth's protective magnetosphere, the consequences were truly monumental. The planet's invisible shield took the brunt of the scorching solar matter. Our planet's magnetic field literally contracted and warped under the colossal external pressure. The field lines twisted, allowing some of the dangerous energy to escape into the atmosphere. Electrical charges began to furiously bombard the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere's reaction to this intrusion was instantaneous and visually stunning. The sky across the entire planet suddenly lit up with unprecedentedly bright and at times eerie colors of unseen auroras. This absolutely incredible and massive spectacle was witnessed simultaneously by millions of ordinary people. It was even seen by residents of those southern latitudes where such a phenomenon had certainly not occurred for centuries. The colorful auroras blazed brightly even over the hot tropical islands in the ocean. For some people, this evoked childlike delight, while for others, it aroused a deep, primal fear. Social media was instantly flooded with thousands of vivid and unusual photos. To most ordinary people, this event simply looked like a stunningly beautiful phenomenon. It seemed to them like a grand and completely free light show from Mother Nature herself. Crowds of people joyfully took to the streets at night with their smartphones and expensive cameras. They wanted to capture this astonishingly glowing and shimmering night sky forever. None of them even suspected the real, deadly danger of this beautiful glow. However, a completely different mood reigned in control rooms and observatories. For all systems engineers and scientists, this otherworldly beauty had become the main symbol of an impending technological catastrophe. They understood perfectly and very clearly the harsh physics of the process unfolding. Experts knew that these bright neon colors in the sky signaled extreme stress on our magnetosphere. Earth's protective shield was literally cracking at the seams, barely holding back the destructive cosmic energy. In those hours, we were all hanging by a thread from total and global technological paralysis. Expert centers immediately raised the threat level to the maximum possible limit. This powerful May storm officially received the highest danger rating on the International Space Weather Scale. The event immediately went down in history as an unprecedented blow to our infrastructure. It became the most powerful geomagnetic event recorded in the last 2 decades of continuous scientific observation. The digital environment we all take for granted began to rapidly collapse right before our eyes. Precise navigation systems were the first to feel the heavy breath of the enraged star. Global satellite navigation systems around the world began to experience very serious malfunctions. Devices in cars and phones began to mass-produce completely erroneous coordinates for their owners. Large-scale farmers in highly developed countries suddenly lost remote control over their expensive automated agricultural equipment. Smart tractors came to a halt in the middle of fields, having permanently lost contact with their control satellites. Commercial airlines were forced to urgently reroute their usual long-haul flights. Planes were diverted away from the poles, desperately shielding crews and passengers from excessively high radiation doses. The illusion of our safety was finally shattered by the harsh reality of the magnetic storm. It was at this critical moment that we truly felt, for the first time, our total vulnerability to the universe. All of our much vaunted and incredibly complex high-precision infrastructure began to fail everywhere. It shuddered from the powerful invisible blow that came to us from deep space. Technology simply proved completely helpless in the face of ancient forces of nature. Wires and microchips turned into excellent long antennas for collecting destructive solar energy. The main blow fell on the very foundation of our civilization, the energy sector. Major energy companies everywhere recorded extremely dangerous induced currents. This powerful energy accumulated in long transmission lines, threatening to burn out expensive transformers. Dispatchers on duty worked at the absolute limit of their human endurance for long hours on end. They manually redistributed power to prevent a catastrophic cascading blackout across vast regions. We were incredibly lucky that this particular cosmic strike did not lead to a total blackout collapse of the system. Surviving this storm does not give us the right to relax and celebrate an imminent victory. Scientists are certain that this May storm is by no means the final chord of turbulent stellar activity. We have seen only the beginning of a long and very dangerous astronomical process. In essence, it was merely a loud warning shot that the sun fired right over our unsuspecting heads. The star simply tested the strength of our flimsy Earth-based defense systems. The greatest trials for humanity are still taking shape in the seething depths of the immense celestial body. Leading global astrophysicists are persistently warning authorities about the continued existence of an incredibly high threat. They constantly say that the projected peak of the 25th solar cycle has not even come close to being reached. Time is working against us. As with each new month, the tension only intensifies. The internal magnetic structure of our star is becoming increasingly unpredictable, chaotic, and extremely aggressive. The likelihood of a new devastating blow to the planet is growing steadily every day. This terrifying threat counter is updated with every new flare that forms on the solar disk. The scientific community has received a very painful and humiliating lesson in humility before the forces of nature. This massive event has made it painfully clear to everyone just how utterly inadequate our current predictive models are. Theorists have reached a dead end, staring at the new arrays of telemetry data. Scientists in laboratories are still painstakingly trying to understand the physics of this complex phenomenon. No one knows for certain how such a powerful storm could have formed at this specific time. The sun has broken all the laws that humans themselves devised for it in their books. The much-vaunted technologies for analyzing digital data suffered a crushing and complete fiasco. Not even the most advanced supercomputer in the world could have predicted this danger in advance. Smart machines did not foresee such a unique and extreme configuration of the star's tangled magnetic fields. We were simply sitting comfortably in a plush auditorium, waiting for a comedy, when a horror movie suddenly began on the screen. At the critical moment, our advanced Earth science proved completely useless. Human intellect completely faltered in the face of true and indomitable cosmic power. The calm in scientific laboratories was quickly replaced by heated and anxious debates about our future. What if this isn't just a random flare-up, but the beginning of an entirely new paradigm? It is quite possible that right now our own sun may be confidently entering a long phase of hyperactivity. We know absolutely nothing about such a grim scenario. Our official documented history of astronomical observations is too short to draw serious conclusions. Scientists simply have no right to confidently claim a complete understanding of global solar rhythms. Humanity has existed in this world for far too short a time to judge what is truly eternal. We have systematically studied the behavior of our nearest star for only a mere couple of hundred years. And for an ancient cosmic object of such colossal scale, that time is nothing at all. From the perspective of the universe's age, this period lasts even less than a single very brief moment. Therefore, we are absolutely unprepared for long-term and radical changes in the fundamental cosmic conditions around us. We will have to relearn how to survive in a completely new, hostile environment. Space has taught us an excellent lesson in true humility in the face of overwhelming physical force. The storm last May served as a harsh and timely reminder to all of humanity of our vulnerability. It clearly demonstrated to all doubters who is truly the master of our planetary system. We can stroke our egos as much as we like and take pride in tiny silicon microchips. People can endlessly praise their smart algorithms and complex global neural networks. But all these achievements pale in comparison to the primal energy of a blazing giant star. Nature is capable of wiping out our achievements in literally a few hours of an active phase. A single, truly powerful solar flare is capable of turning all these earthly technologies into useless scrap metal. In essence, we are living carelessly in a beautiful crystal castle built right on the steep slope of a massive active volcano. And now, this unpredictable volcano has just begun to spew its first hot ash upon us. We realize too late just how dangerous our situation really is. Our familiar and comfortable technological prosperity turned out to be nothing more than a temporary and very fragile illusion. To grasp the full scale of the looming threat, we need to look back at the recent past. There has already been an event in human history that vividly demonstrated the true fury of the sun. In the fall of 1859, a storm occurred that went down in history as the Carrington event. At that time, our star unleashed a charge of charged particles of incredible power onto Earth. The impact was so strong that the aurora borealis lit up the night sky over the Caribbean. In those distant years, humanity was not yet entangled in a dense web of digital technologies. The main technological achievement of the era was the nascent telegraph system. But even this primitive infrastructure suffered colossal and irreparable damage. The induced currents in the telegraph wires were so strong that the paper in the machines caught fire. Telegraph operators received powerful electric shocks right at their workstations. The system could send messages even with the power batteries completely disconnected. The Earth's atmosphere was literally overflowing with electricity, defying all the familiar laws of physics. People of that time watched these inexplicable natural phenomena with mystical horror. To them, it looked like the biblical end of the world or the wrath of angry gods. They had absolutely no understanding of the connection between the bright flashes on the sun and the fires at the telegraph stations. If the Carrington event were to occur today, the consequences would be apocalyptic. Our modern civilization cannot survive without a continuous supply of electricity and communication. A powerful geomagnetic storm of this magnitude would instantly disable all orbital satellites. Navigation systems, on which ships and airplanes depend, would cease to function in a single second. Huge main transformers at power plants would simply melt from the inside under the immense strain. Replacing such gigantic transformers requires many months of painstaking labor and complex logistics. But without electricity, it will be impossible to manufacture new parts or deliver them to the site. Entire metropolises will be plunged into total darkness for weeks or even months. The supply of clean water will stop, and sewage pumps and refrigeration units will cease to function. Life in modern concrete jungles will quickly turn into a struggle for primitive survival. Financial systems will collapse, as all banking servers will lose communication with one another. No one will be able to buy even a loaf of bread using a regular bank card or phone. Logistics for food delivery to major cities will grind to a halt due to the paralysis of electronic control systems. Insurance company experts estimate the potential damage from such a strike at trillions of dollars. But the real cost will be measured not in money, but in millions of human lives. It is precisely this terrifying specter that now relentlessly haunts all solar physicists. We know for certain that events on the scale of the Carrington event occur on average once every 150 years. Mathematical statistics inexorably tell us that the time for the next global strike has already come. The current 25th cycle has already demonstrated its extreme and unpredictable ferocity. Recent data show that our star is rapidly accumulating energy for a new super flare. With each passing day of increasing solar activity, we are playing cosmic Russian roulette. Flares occur constantly, but so far, it is only by a miracle that they have not been directed straight at Earth. Earth is just a tiny target in a vast and empty cosmic shooting range. But sooner or later, the barrel of this plasma weapon will inevitably be aimed directly at us. And then we will have only a few hours to prepare for the inevitable strike. In that fleeting time, it is impossible to shut down and secure the entire global infrastructure. Governments lack a clear and coordinated plan of action in the event of a total, planet-wide blackout. We have ignored this fundamental threat for too long, dismissing it as the stuff of Hollywood science fiction. Now, this fiction is rapidly and inexorably becoming our terrifying reality. We have become hostages to our own blind faith in the infallibility of progress. The Carrington event was merely a minor test of resilience for a primitive society. A new strike of similar magnitude will confront a civilization that is entirely dependent on microchips. We have created the perfect target for magnetic storms with our own hands. Our drive toward total digitization has made us as vulnerable as possible in the face of the universe. And the sun, it seems, is preparing to teach us the harshest lesson in our history. The main question currently tormenting the minds of all astrophysicists sounds frighteningly simple. Why do our complex and expensive predictive models fail so catastrophically? For decades, scientists have been constructing mathematical equations describing the behavior of solar plasma. We have launched space probes directly into the star's corona to obtain the most accurate data. But in the end, all these colossal efforts have proven practically useless in practice. The problem lies in the very nature of the solar dynamo, the mechanism that generates the magnetic field. We try to describe the turbulent flows of superheated gas using linear algorithms, but the sun is the embodiment of absolute chaos, where the laws of nonlinear dynamics prevail. The slightest deviation in the initial conditions leads to massive changes in the outcome. This is the classic butterfly effect, only scaled up to the size of an entire star system. We see only the thinnest outer shell of our blazing home star. The primary processes of magnetic field formation are hidden deep within its unreachable interior. We cannot look beneath the sun's surface to measure the exact parameters of convection. Scientists base their conjectures exclusively on indirect evidence and acoustic waves. This is akin to trying to understand the workings of a complex engine by listening to the sound of its operation from a distance. Our models were trained on a very limited set of historical data about past cycles. We have only been reliably recording solar activity with instruments for the last 70 years. For a star that lives for billions of years, this is even less than a fraction of a second. We are trying to predict the behavior of an eternal ocean by observing it for only a couple of brief moments. It is no surprise that the ocean ultimately presented us with an extremely unpleasant and dangerous surprise. Moreover, we completely ignore long-term changes within the Sun itself. What if the notorious 11-year cycle is merely a minor ripple on the surface? There are hypotheses about century-long and even millennium-long rhythms of solar activity about which we know nothing. Perhaps we have simply entered an era of globally increased solar activity. Our old formulas no longer work because the basic physical conditions themselves have changed. This frightening uncertainty renders any long-term forecast utterly meaningless. Space agencies continue to publish graphs, but the researchers themselves no longer believe in them. They see how the curve of actual observations breaks through the ceilings of their best models every day. The scientific community finds itself in a state of deep crisis and total confusion. We have lost the ability to foresee the future in the very area most critical to our survival. Every new sunspot is now perceived not as a scientific fact, but as a threat. We are forced to live constantly in a state of anticipation of a possible technological catastrophe. A miscalculation could cost us our entire modern, comfortable civilization. We have become blind captains, steering a high-tech ship straight into the eye of the storm. And our vaunted navigation instruments are showing a completely wrong course. Meanwhile, we are spending billions on building new satellites to monitor solar activity. But these devices do not give us what matters most: an understanding of the deep processes within the Sun. They can only confirm the fact of an approaching storm when it is already too late to change anything. Early warning gives us, at most, a couple of days for a feeble attempt to save the power grids. This is critically insufficient time to prevent a massive planetary collapse. We need to completely rethink our approach to the study of stellar physics. We need entirely new paradigms and quantum computers to handle calculations of this level of complexity. But we no longer have time for leisurely fundamental research. The 25th cycle is already raging, and its peak promises to be truly devastating. We are forced to learn to swim right in the epicenter of a raging cosmic tsunami. Our current failures in forecasting are not merely an unfortunate academic setback. They are direct evidence of our glaring incompetence on a cosmic scale. We believed too soon in our greatness and our ability to control the forces of nature. Now, the universe is clearly showing us our true, very humble place in the hierarchy. And the Sun is the chief and most severe teacher in this harsh reality. The consequences of the Sun's anomalous behavior are not limited to a threat to Earth's power grids. The first victims of this cosmic fury are spacecraft in near-Earth orbit. In February 2022, SpaceX faced the harsh reality of space weather. A small geomagnetic storm, which wasn't even considered extreme, led to catastrophic results. 40 modern Starlink communication satellites simply fell out of orbit and burned up in the atmosphere. This happened due to a completely unforeseen effect that few had considered. When a solar storm hits Earth, the upper layers of our atmosphere heat up significantly and expand. The density of gas in low orbits suddenly increases by several dozen times. Satellites, which are designed to fly in a vacuum, suddenly crash into a dense wall of air. They rapidly lose speed and fall downward, turning into bright shooting stars. This incident came as a real shock to the entire modern commercial space industry. Engineers realized that near-Earth space had become much more hostile and dangerous. We had planned to launch tens of thousands of new spacecraft to create a global internet. But now all these grand plans are under a direct and clear threat of destruction. At any moment, the Sun could simply clear low Earth orbit of our high-tech debris. And the problem isn't limited to Elon Musk's small commercial communications satellites. Huge international orbital stations are also forced to constantly maneuver and burn through fuel. Increased radiation is disabling the delicate electronics and solar panels of these expensive spacecraft. Computers in orbit are starting to throw critical errors due to being hit by heavy charged particles. Astronauts are forced to hide in shielded compartments, fleeing from an invisible radioactive storm. We have literally littered orbit with fragile machines that are unable to survive in harsh conditions. Modern microelectronics has become too miniature and therefore incredibly vulnerable to radiation. Old Soviet and American spacecraft were massive and shielded by a thick layer of metal. New satellites, however, are assembled from commercial components that burn up at the first serious impact. We have taken a step backward in reliability for the sake of mass production and the low cost of space launches. If the 25th cycle continues to grow at the same alarming rate, the orbit will be emptied. We could suddenly lose not only our communications, but also accurate weather forecasts. Earth observation satellites will simply stop sending data on developing hurricanes. The military will lose its early warning systems for missile attacks, which will disrupt the global balance. Our technological blindness will set in instantly, plunging the modern world into complete chaos. With each expansion of the atmosphere, not only operational satellites, but also debris fall to Earth. Huge chunks of old rockets and spent rocket stages begin to descend uncontrollably from orbit. They threaten populated areas, as their trajectory is impossible to predict with precision. The sky is literally falling on our heads due to the invisible breath of an enraged star. We find ourselves trapped beneath a dome that is itself becoming dangerous. This chain reaction of destruction in orbit is known to scientists as the Kessler effect. A single exploding spacecraft creates a cloud of debris that destroys other satellites in a chain reaction. A solar storm could be the very trigger that sets this apocalyptic scenario in motion. Near-Earth space could become completely unusable for centuries to come. We would find ourselves permanently trapped on Earth, cut off from our own space achievements. And once again, we see our blind confidence shatter against harsh reality. We plan to conquer Mars, but we cannot even ensure safety in low Earth orbit. Our space ambitions have collided with an insurmountable force that we chose to forget. The sun makes it clear that it will not tolerate our careless presence in its domain. We are merely uninvited guests in this harsh, radioactive ocean of emptiness. Falling satellites are a vivid and very costly metaphor for our total vulnerability. We have entrusted our lives and safety to machines floating in airless space, but we forgot to protect these machines from the fury of the very star that gives us light. Now, every new flare of activity on the sun makes engineers turn gray with terror. The space age may end as suddenly as it began, leaving us with nothing. The problem is not limited to orbit or power lines in northern countries. The threat descends far below the level of the sky and affects the terrestrial communications we are accustomed to. Geomagnetic storms have the insidious ability to penetrate the most unexpected elements of our global infrastructure. Facilities that engineers have always considered absolutely reliable and safe are under attack. Dangerous cosmic energy finds its way into the hidden underground labyrinths of our civilization. For example, long oil and gas pipelines are also subject to powerful induced currents. They stretch for thousands of kilometers and act as giant receiving antennas for solar radiation. These currents greatly accelerate the natural corrosion of strong steel. They silently destroy sturdy pipes from the inside in just a matter of months. As a result, massive pipelines supplying entire continents can spring deadly leaks in thousands of places at once. Engineers are installing special cathodic protection systems on oil pipelines everywhere. These devices run a weak countercurrent to prevent rust from forming on the pipes. But they are completely unsuited for extreme and sudden surges in cosmic voltage. A powerful solar flare is capable of instantly burning out this fragile electrical protection. After such a surge, the entire pipeline, stretching for many kilometers, will be left completely defenseless against rapid destruction. The environmental consequences of such sudden and massive pipeline ruptures are difficult to fully imagine. Black gold and explosive gas will gush out in forests and near major cities. Millions of tons of toxic substances will quickly poison fertile soil and clean groundwater across the globe. Nature will take decades to recover from such a blow. And the cause of this global catastrophe will be nothing more than an invisible disturbance in a distant magnetic field. Another hidden and extremely dangerous threat lurks deep on the dark floor of the world's oceans. There lies the most vital artery of our modern digital civilization, a vast and extensive network of undersea fiber optic cables firmly connects all continents into a single information web. Trillions of bytes of critical data flow through these thin channels every second. At first glance, it seems that the thickness of the water reliably shields them from any threat. The fragile glass fibers themselves do indeed remain unaffected by magnetic storms and radiation from space. But the light signal inevitably fades when transmitted over such vast transoceanic distances. That is why special amplifying electrical repeaters are regularly installed on the seabed. They are powered by long copper wires running parallel to the fiber optic cables. And it is precisely this classic metal that is extremely vulnerable to powerful geomagnetic disturbances from the raging sun. If a strong electromagnetic storm were to disable these seabed repeaters, the global internet would simply cease to exist. The familiar World Wide Web would instantly fragment into isolated regional pieces. Continents would find themselves completely and hopelessly cut off from one another in terms of information for a very long time. Specialized repair vessels would be physically unable to quickly repair the burned-out equipment at depths of many kilometers during a storm. Lifting each damaged cable from the ocean floor would require enormous effort and weeks of painstaking work. The economic consequences of such a communication breakdown would be truly catastrophic for all countries. Today's global financial system is critically dependent on rapid, microsecond-long transactions between continental exchanges. Without a unified network, it would collapse instantly and irrevocably, destroying global markets. Electronic bank cards would turn into useless pieces of plastic in your pockets. We would suddenly find ourselves thrown back into the harsh era of slow paper letters and isolated local information silos. This total, universal interconnectedness makes our modern civilization an incredibly fragile and unstable system. We have woven the whole world into a single tangle, where the breaking of a single thread immediately destroys the entire pattern. In the 19th century, the failure of the first electric telegraph caused only minor temporary inconveniences for a small group of businessmen. The rest of the world didn't even notice this modest technological glitch. The lives of ordinary people continued at their usual, unhurried pace. Today, however, a global internet outage would cause an immediate and severe halt to all global logistics. Major manufacturing operations would grind to a halt. Commercial ports would freeze, and the basic infrastructure of massive metropolises would be disrupted. Modern supermarkets have long since ceased to maintain large internal stockpiles or spacious warehouses. They are entirely dependent on complex electronic systems and continuous deliveries strictly adhering to just-in-time principles. Without electronic communications and databases, grocery store shelves would be emptied in just 3 or 4 short days. The panic over food shortages that would inevitably follow would be far more terrifying than any direct physical consequences of a solar flare. People have long grown accustomed to comfort and are completely incapable of surviving in conditions of acute food scarcity. A complete lack of communication and reliable information very quickly gives rise to a primal, animal fear. This terror will trigger uncontrollable chaos in vast, densely populated concrete metropolises. Crowds of frightened city dwellers will begin to sweep up the remaining goods, guided solely by the instinct for self-preservation. Without their usual radios, law enforcement agencies will be unable to effectively coordinate their response. They will be completely powerless to maintain such a fragile and familiar public order. Urban emergency alert systems and sirens will simply fall silent without a constant supply of electricity. This will leave many millions of civilians in a terrifying and deafening state of complete uncertainty. The sun does not kill us directly with its rays. It cunningly and simply shuts down society's critical life support systems. The entire complex architecture of our modern world was originally built on a very naive assumption. Engineers have always proceeded from the idea of the eternal stability of the cosmic environment surrounding us. For decades, we thoughtlessly optimized every production process solely for the sake of maximizing profits. Corporations sacrificed redundant system backups and the overall fundamental reliability of networks in the name of cost savings. No one wanted to invest large sums of money in protection against unlikely threats. As a result, humanity today simply has no backup global internet network. We completely lack powerful global backup power plants, carefully preserved for the worst-case scenario. We have presumptuously spun the thinnest glass web of information across the entire planet. And now, with growing, chilling dread, we watch the approaching inevitable cosmic storm. A single, truly powerful gust of this hot solar wind could easily tear our intricate web to shreds. Leading global scientists are now desperately trying to get through to the high offices of influential politicians. Physicists are speaking at summits, loudly calling for the urgent strengthening of our planet's basic infrastructure. But the massive modernization of millions of kilometers of old wires and unprotected repeaters terrifies officials. This colossal undertaking requires absolutely astronomical financial injections from national budgets. It is much easier for politicians to pretend that such a huge problem simply does not exist. No leader in the world wants to spend trillions of dollars of public funds on obscure preventive measures. It is extremely difficult for people to believe in a threat that is completely invisible to the naked eye. Governments of all countries prefer to address only immediate problems, ignoring the sword of Damocles of the universe hanging over us. They leave this invisible crisis to future generations in the hope of a miracle. Ultimately, our banal greed and human short-sightedness will become the main causes of a future technological apocalypse. The current unpredictable 25th solar cycle has become the harshest lesson for us. Astrophysicists are certain that this is our most serious and final warning before the real blow. This period has made it abundantly clear to all skeptics that the old scientific predictions are flawed. Statistics from past quiet and peaceful years no longer guarantee our safety in any way. Space has unexpectedly turned its wrath into mercy, and we were not prepared for this. The mathematical geometry of the coming global catastrophe has already been fully mapped out in laboratories. This grim scenario of technological collapse is fully prepared for immediate implementation. All our vulnerabilities have long been known to experts. All the weak points of our technogenic civilization have been laid bare to the limit. We certainly won't have time to hide these weaknesses in a few months. All that remains for us is to hold our breath and watch the growing dark spots on the surface of the sun. Humanity has rapidly and imperceptibly approached a very dangerous critical point in its development. Beyond this invisible boundary, our unbridled technological progress becomes our own ruthless executioner. Total dependence on invisible electromagnetic fields has made us submissive hostages of a massive, scorching star. We are no longer masters of our comfortable fate, as our lives hang by a thread. Every day our gadgets function normally is not due to our own merit, but simply sheer luck. The great universe is still graciously allowing us to play with our complex electronic toys without a care in the world. But the rules of this cosmic casino never work in favor of the carefree player. The star has already begun sending us unambiguous signals about the colossal changes to come. Ignoring these ominous signs from the heavens is becoming an increasingly dangerous endeavor for all of humanity. But the sun's mood has already shifted, and this dangerous game will soon be over. There is another aspect of solar activity that is not commonly discussed in public. This topic often becomes extremely uncomfortable in serious medical circles and health ministries. We are talking about the direct impact of geomagnetic storms on the biology and health of the people on the planet themselves. We have become too accustomed to worrying about broken satellites, forgetting about our own living bodies. Space weather dictates its harsh rules not only to metal, but also to our flesh. For a long time, conservative mainstream science flatly denied any direct link between solar flares and human well-being. Patients' complaints of severe weakness on such days were dismissed as mere hypochondria and ordinary fatigue. But recent large-scale studies have begun to gradually reveal the frightening truth about this invisible connection. Scientists have gathered data that can no longer be simply hidden or ignored. It turns out that our nervous and cardiovascular systems are extremely sensitive to fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic fields. The raw statistics from emergency rooms relentlessly confirm these grim medical hypotheses. The numbers of emergency calls speak for themselves, showing sharp spikes precisely during periods of storms. On days of strong magnetic disturbances, the number of heart attacks and strokes rises sharply worldwide. Hospitals in major cities struggle to cope with the sudden influx of cardiac patients. Doctors are forced to work themselves to the bone, saving people from this invisible blow from the sky. The physiology of these internal processes has begun to become clearer, and the picture looks quite alarming. Under the influence of these anomalies, the blood in the vessels suddenly becomes much thicker and more viscous. Because of this, vital capillary blood flow in the brain and heart slows down critically. As a result, people with long-standing chronic illnesses begin to experience unexplained and severe bouts of pain. This invisible cosmic radiation mercilessly strikes the weakest and most vulnerable members of our vast society. But even more frightening is the hidden impact of magnetic storms on our fragile psyche. The human brain is an incredibly complex, natural electrochemical mechanism. Severe electromagnetic fluctuations can directly interfere with the functioning of these delicate neural connections in the brain. Human bioelectric currents are thrown off their usual rhythm under the immense pressure of external cosmic frequencies. This often leads to unpredictable emotional reactions, even in the most composed and calm individuals. During long periods of extreme solar activity, the police record a multitude of strange incidents. There is a noticeable surge in unexplained street aggression and a wave of sudden deep depression among city dwellers. There is also a statistically significant increase in the number of serious traffic accidents on busy roads. This is due to a sudden decrease in reaction time and concentration among tired drivers. The sun is literally capable of driving us mad by remotely manipulating our internal rhythms. People often forget that we are an integral biological part of Earth's biosphere. And our home planet itself has always been inextricably and firmly connected to the surrounding cosmos. Our human body has slowly evolved under the conditions of a strictly defined magnetic background over millions of years. Nature created us to be perfectly suited only for one specific and tranquil habitat. We are tuned to a quiet frequency, which is now being disrupted by loud cosmic interference. Any extreme or sudden changes to this familiar background are perceived by our bodies as extremely distressing. The nervous system interprets this disruption as a signal of immediate, life-threatening biological danger. Destructive hormones of anxiety and severe stress are instantly released into the bloodstream. The protective immune system begins to work frantically at the absolute limit of its physical capabilities. We quickly wear ourselves out from the inside under the influence of the very same forces that destroy orbital satellites. Despite scientific advances, researchers still cannot fully explain the physiology of this complex process. The brightest minds are grappling with the mystery of space's profound influence on living organic tissues. How exactly do these invisible magnetic lines interact directly with the molecules in our living cells? This important question in modern biophysics still lacks a precise and unambiguous answer. There are only a few theories attempting to explain this global biological phenomenon. Perhaps the true answer lies in microscopic crystals of a special mineral called magnetite. These particles are naturally found deep within the tissues of the human brain. Under strong disturbances, they react sensitively to the external storm, like the needles of tiny compasses. Their movement causes microscopic but extremely critical disruptions in the transmission of nerve impulses. We literally become living antennas, receiving the destructive signal of a collapsing star. If the 25th cycle truly marks the transition to a new era of solar hyperactivity, the consequences are dire. We may be entering a harsh historical phase of constant and intense bombardment of the planet. In that case, we will face not only widespread power outages and frequent disruptions to our precious internet. The threat to humanity will take on a completely different, more terrifying personal character. Technology will take a back seat in the face of a global threat to the nation's health. As a direct consequence, we may face a global public health crisis and widespread mental health issues among the population. Millions of ordinary people will feel completely exhausted and unwell on a daily basis. And all of this will occur without any apparent standard viral or medical causes. City clinics will quickly fill up with frightened patients, all complaining of the same strange symptoms of weakness. Modern doctors simply won't be able to make an accurate diagnosis or prescribe the correct treatment. Hiding this growing problem from the public becomes increasingly difficult with every new geomagnetic storm. People are beginning to notice a clear pattern between their poor health and news about space. Independent researchers are constantly publishing graphs showing the correlation between solar flares and mortality rates in cities. It is becoming practically impossible, even for relevant government agencies, to ignore this direct evidence. The truth is relentlessly breaking through the thick wall of bureaucratic denial. The problem is that strict medical protocols do not take space weather into account at all. This oversight renders standard clinical treatment completely ineffective during strong magnetic storms. We stubbornly try to treat emerging symptoms with the usual chemical pills from the nearest pharmacy. At the same time, we completely ignore the root cause of this enormous astronomical scale. Our medicine has proven to be just as blind as our much-vaunted astrophysical predictive models. This whole situation adds yet another profound layer of anxiety to the overall apocalyptic picture of the future. It makes the emerging scenario of our development truly frightening and hopeless. Historically, we have grown accustomed to fearing external man-made threats like power outages or plane crashes. We are terrified by the sudden shutdown of banking servers or a shortage of gasoline at gas stations. We always prepare to fend off attacks specifically from our own machines and mechanisms. But we are psychologically completely unprepared for the enemy to infiltrate our own circulatory system unnoticed. An invisible force attacks us unhindered from within, bypassing all external lines of defense. Our physiology will betray us at the very moment the sun delivers its devastating blow to Earth. At the hour of reckoning, we will be too weak to fight for the survival of our infrastructure. It is impossible to hide from this impact. neither in a thick concrete bunker nor deep underground. The approaching 25th cycle mercilessly strips away all pretense of our vaunted security and independence. It shatters our comforting illusions of complete control over our own lives and the planet. We bitterly realize that humans are infinitely fragile beings, completely dependent on the whims of the stars. Our advanced intellect has been utterly unable to override the fundamental laws of the universe's physics. Nature is once again placing arrogant humanity in its rightful and very humble place. Our entire global civilization literally hangs by the finest thread of balance between the electromagnetic fields of the planet and the cosmos. It is this invisible energetic equilibrium that allows us to build cities and advance science. Any shift in this precarious balance directly threatens us with physical annihilation as a biological species. We have no spare planet with ideal greenhouse conditions for a quick move. And judging by the latest data from observatories, this balance has already begun to collapse rapidly and irreversibly. For centuries, we gazed at the stars in search of answers for so long that we forgot the danger. In this romantic quest, we lost our vigilance and sense of self-preservation. We naively regarded space as a distant, beautiful, and detached backdrop to our turbulent earthly lives. It seemed to us that celestial mechanics had nothing to do with our simple human affairs. We made our plans without looking back at the true masters of this vast galaxy. But the cold cosmos turned out to be an incredibly active and extremely aggressive participant in our daily biological existence. The scorching sun imperiously dictates its harsh conditions for survival to us, and we are powerless to resist. We have no technology capable of stopping this ancient cosmic energy. Humanity will have to come to terms with the new rules of the game and simply try to survive the coming chaos. We are merely helpless spectators in this grand theater of physical and biological destruction. What if we are witnessing not just an anomaly, but the beginning of a completely new normal for the universe? This hypothesis is increasingly being voiced in the corridors of closed-door scientific conferences on astrophysics. Historical data on carbon isotopes in ancient trees tell us an extremely alarming story. It turns out that the sun has already experienced periods of monstrous activity thousands and tens of thousands of years ago. In those days, storms occurred on Earth that were dozens of times more powerful than the infamous Carrington event. Back then, these superflares went unnoticed by the primitive hunters and gatherers of the ancient world. They simply didn't have electronics that could be fried by induced cosmic currents. But today, such a millennia-long storm would mean the guaranteed end of our high-tech era. We built our civilization during a period of a surprisingly long and unnaturally calm solar window, and we made a fatal mistake by mistaking this temporary lull for a permanent and unshakable norm. The current 25th cycle may be a harbinger of the sun's return to its true nature. If the star emerges from hibernation, all our technologies will instantly become obsolete junk. We cannot quickly adapt the planet's power grids to withstand strikes of 1,000 times their current capacity. This will require a complete rethinking of the laws of physics and the creation of fundamentally new insulation materials. Our science simply cannot keep up with the rapidly changing rules of the game in the solar system. Astronomers look with horror at other stars similar to our own sun. Telescopes regularly detect so-called superflares on them, incinerating entire planetary systems. For a long time, it was believed that our sun was too old and calm for such cataclysms. But recent studies have shown that the mechanism behind the formation of superflares is at work on our star as well. We simply have never witnessed this in the era of documented and conscious human history. This terrifying thought completely changes our understanding of the safety of planet Earth. We look for external threats in the form of asteroids or the mythical global warming caused by factories. But the real existential threat hangs right over our heads every single day. The sun possesses enough energy to blow away our atmosphere or fry our electronics in seconds. We are utterly powerless in the face of such primal and incredibly vast cosmic power. The paradigm shift lies in acknowledging our absolute cosmic insignificance and vulnerability. Scientists can no longer guarantee a peaceful future, not even for the next 10 years. We have entered an era of complete uncertainty, where prediction charts can be thrown in the trash. Every new flare on the sun's eastern limb could turn out to be the final one. And we will have neither a rescue plan nor underground bunkers to preserve our infrastructure. Our entire modern culture is permeated by the idea of humanity's constant and uninterrupted technological progress. We dream of the singularity, artificial intelligence, and the colonization of distant star systems in the galaxy. But we have built this house of cards of ambition right on a foundation of quicksand. A single strong magnetic disturbance will throw us back into the dark ages without the internet or electricity. Our progress is merely an illusion, graciously permitted to us by the sun, which remains calm for now. This is precisely why the data from the 25th cycle is causing such deep existential depression among experts. They see the fundamental principle of constancy, upon which all astrophysics rests, crumbling. The star behaves irrationally, chaotically, and incredibly aggressively toward its planets. This shatters all our naive hopes for a long and happy colonization of near-Earth space. Space makes it clear that it is absolutely not meant for fragile biological organisms. We are on the threshold of a monumental rethinking of our place in this hostile universe. We will have to learn to live under conditions of constant and unpredictable cosmic threats to our survival. Future technologies must be built not for speed or convenience, but for maximum survivability. We will have to learn to protect our microchips as carefully as we protect life itself. Otherwise, our brilliant digital age will become nothing more than a brief footnote in history. The universe is vast, but it is far from friendly to us and our electronic toys. We have played with fire for too long, failing to understand the true nature of this cosmic flame. The 25th solar cycle is a brutal wake-up call, interrupting our long technological slumber. And the reality in which we have awakened has turned out to be far more terrifying than any of our nightmares. The paradigm shift has already occurred, and there is no turning back to the illusion of safety. Every time we look at the blinding solar disk, we should feel awe. It is not just a warm sphere that warms our beaches and nourishes green plants with energy. It is a gigantic thermonuclear monster that only temporarily allows us to exist in its shadow. We have grown accustomed to conquering nature, reversing the flow of rivers, and splitting atomic nuclei. But in the face of our star, all these achievements look like laughable child's play. The anomalies of the 25th cycle force us to look our greatest existential fear in the eye. The fear that we control absolutely nothing in this vast and cold universe. We have built an incredibly complex civilization, believing ourselves to be the crown of creation and masters of the situation. But the foundation of this civilization turned out to be fatally dependent on the unpredictable magnetic vortices of superheated plasma. We are hostages who have fallen in love with our technology, forgetting who holds the switch. Perhaps this is precisely why we still see no signals from other advanced civilizations. The famous Fermi paradox may have a frighteningly simple and very tragic astrophysical explanation. Any technological race inevitably creates an infrastructure vulnerable to the electromagnetic cataclysms of its home star. And sooner or later, the star is bound to strike, throwing the civilization back into the Stone Age. They simply do not have time to reach the level of interstellar travel before the first fatal superflares. We are following exactly the same dangerous and potentially suicidal evolutionary path. Our thirst for information and data transfer speeds has made us a perfect target for space. We have covered the planet with antennas that will act as lightning rods for the wrath of our sun. The more advanced our technologies become, the greater the likelihood of their instant and complete destruction. We ourselves have carefully prepared the firewood for the bonfire on which our digital age will burn. This frightening philosophy of vulnerability must be the main lesson of the current solar storm. We are not the rulers of nature, but merely tiny microbes on the surface of a speck of dust in the infinite void. Our survival is not the result of our genius, but a simple astronomical fluke. One slight change in the sun's magnetohydrodynamics, and our entire history will end forever. And we will be powerless to oppose this primal force that sweeps everything in its path. Scientists will continue to build new models, desperately trying to force the chaos of the universe into strict formulas. But each new cycle will destroy these fragile mathematical illusions again and again. It is impossible to fully comprehend the sun, just as it is impossible for an ant to understand the workings of a massive nuclear power plant. All that remains for us is to accept our insignificance and be prepared for the worst-case scenario. Existential anxiety is the only adequate response to the truth about the nature of this world. Instead of building crystal castles of illusion, we must acknowledge our fundamental weakness. Our dependence on technology has become our greatest Achilles heel on a solar system scale. Microchips haven't made us stronger. They've made us far weaker and more vulnerable than ever before. Ancient humans could survive any solar flare. They would simply witness the beautiful northern lights. Modern humans would die in the concrete jungle without water or food within a couple of weeks. This is the cruel irony of the evolution of the mind, which is leading the species to self-destruction through progress. We have created an artificial habitat that is incompatible with the real laws of our solar system. And now the sun is beginning to test this environment's resilience with frightening and methodical regularity. The 25th cycle is merely the first stage of this global cosmic survival test. And so far, all the data indicates that we are failing this exam spectacularly. The next time your cell signal drops or your home internet goes down, don't rush to blame your provider or look for problems with your expensive router. Perhaps, at this very moment, another colossal plasma eruption has occurred on the sun. Perhaps these are the first echoes of the very impact that will forever change the course of human history. Our reality hangs by a thread, and that thread is woven from invisible lines of the magnetic field. Reality is nothing like what we've grown accustomed to thinking in our safe everyday lives. It is not stable, not predictable, and certainly does not care about our comfortable survival. The sun is behaving abnormally because we have devised the wrong rules. We are living in the era of our star's great awakening, and this awakening does not bode well for us. Space is not an empty arena for heroic deeds. It is a zone of absolute and inevitable danger. We find ourselves on the brink of the most monumental crisis in the entire history of human civilization. This is not a war waged by politicians, nor an economic collapse, nor a mysterious global pandemic. It is a crisis of our fundamental place in the universe and our profound misunderstanding of the laws of nature. Scientists in observatories understand this better than anyone, staring anxiously at the flickering graphs on their monitors. Every new sunspot is yet another reminder of our total cosmic helplessness. Humanity has believed for too long in the fairy tale that we control our own destiny. We naively thought we could subdue any force of nature through intellect and technology. But the reality hidden in the blinding light of our star turned out to be incredibly harsh and cruel. It shattered our illusions, proving the best predictions made by the smartest people on the planet wrong. We are just children, playing with matches on a powder keg the size of an entire planetary system. Perhaps the coming catastrophes will force us to completely rethink the value of our technological achievements and ambitions. We will realize that the survival of the human species is more important than high-speed internet or the colonization of dead planets. If we manage to survive the peak of the current cycle, we will have to rebuild civilization from scratch. We will be forced to create redundant mechanical systems that do not depend on the whims of electromagnetic fields. Otherwise, our species is doomed to cyclical extinction at the hands of our own home star. But until then, we are forced to live with a constant, oppressive sense of impending global catastrophe. This feeling is akin to waiting for an earthquake in a city built right on the edge of a tectonic fault line. We know the blow is inevitable, but we have absolutely no idea when exactly it will happen. And we are completely unprepared for the devastation it will bring to our familiar world. This anxiety has become the backdrop of our entire modern era, poisoning the joy of technological progress. The anomalous behavior of the 25th cycle is not merely a scientific curiosity for narrow specialists. It is an existential challenge to all of humanity, a test of our readiness to face the true reality of the universe. We must admit defeat in our attempts to calculate chaos and learn humility in the face of the abyss. Otherwise, we will simply vanish into the darkness, leaving behind only charred wires. The universe won't even notice the loss of yet another self-assured civilization on the outskirts of the Milky Way. What if we have been wrong about everything from the very first day of our astronomical observations? What if the sun is not the exception, but the rule for all stars in our vast galaxy? Then the entire cosmos is not an arena for the development of life, but a vast and merciless crematorium. Life can arise only during brief lulls, only to be scorched away by radiation once again. And we are now approaching the end of our allotted safe window of time. In this paradigm, there is no room for optimism or bright dreams of a distant cosmic future. There is only cold calculation and a desperate attempt to hold on for at least one more short day. We are trapped on this planet, illuminated by a star that could destroy us at any moment. Our technological dependence has only accelerated the process, turning us into a perfect target for magnetic storms. We have woven the noose around our own necks, and the sun is merely preparing to knock the stool out from under our feet. When we look at the beautiful photos of the May auroras, we should feel not awe, but terror. This is visual proof that our protective shields are cracking and may soon collapse entirely. Behind this beauty lies the breath of death, capable of casting us back into the darkness of the Middle Ages in a matter of hours. Scientists understand this, but they are powerless to stop the coming storm or alter Earth's orbit. We are all hostages to the situation, hurtling toward the unknown on a massive chunk of rock. The 25th cycle will forever go down in history as a moment of great sobering for the human race. It has shown us that our knowledge is superficial and our technologies are critically vulnerable to external influences. We can no longer hide behind charts and reassuring press releases from the world's space agencies. Harsh reality is knocking at our doors, and that knock sounds like a drum roll before an execution. And the scariest thing is that we can't even close those doors to save ourselves. The universe is vast, dark, and filled with energies we are unable to control or predict. Our home star has turned out not to be a loving mother, but a fearsome and unpredictable cosmic executioner. We have reached the edge of the abyss, and now all we can do is wait for the final storm to begin. We thought we understood this world, but reality turned out to be completely different, ruthless and terrifying. And with every new solar flare, this darkness draws ever closer to us.